So my story tonight is about my husband's rare disease and how the calm kindness of a stranger led us to diagnosis and eventually treatment. So the first character in my story is clearly my husband. His name is Jeff. He is a human doing, not a human being. He is happiest when he is moving, fixing his car, building a house, sewing clothes, baking bread, riding motorcycles, riding bikes, hiking mountains, playing sports, coaching sports. He is about movement and activity, and his energy level is incredibly high. We think his disease started probably quite a while ago, but we mark it on January 1st, 2014. And that was the day that my unflappable husband, who runs right here, never high, never low, goes to the grocery store. And when he came back, he opened up the door and he was visibly shaken, just as white as a ghost. And he said, I got to tell you what just happened. I got to King Soopers and nothing looked right. Nothing. The aisles were crooked. They kind of looked like a funhouse mirror kind of shape. I couldn't read any of the signs. There was no bread in that store, Mitzi. I could not find the bread. I didn't even know where I was. So I pushed my cart outside to look at the exterior to see if that would help me orient. It didn't look right. But I could see my pickup in the corner of the parking lot. So I went back in, paid for the few things that were in my cart, and drove home. I immediately start Googling stroke, aneurysm, brain tumor, early onset Alzheimer's. Armed with that, we go to family medicine. Exams are run, lots of exams done, labs drawn. They send us to endocrinology. And he gets two diagnoses. You have severe reactive hypoglycemia due to adrenal insufficiency. So we'll break those apart. Adrenal insufficiency, it has to do with your cortisol levels. It's a hormone, it's your flight or fight hormone. And his was really low. So the treatment for that is medication and ongoing monitoring. So we get that going. Severe reactive hypoglycemia has to do with your blood sugar. And his blood sugars are all over the place, but they're on the low end of the scale. So normal is about 80 to 120, and he's in the 20s, 30s, 40s. So his symptoms when he's down there in that low blood sugar, tingly lips, very cloudy, blurred vision, cannot think straight at all, absolutely no energy, incredibly lethargic, and very, very confused. So it's a daily battle. His blood sugars drop into the 20s, they go up to the 40s, they go into the 60s, and the treatment for this is measure, measure, measure. So we do that, and it gets to the point where we have measured enough when the symptoms show up that I can say to Jeff, your blood sugar's off, I can tell. He says, yeah, I feel like I'm about a 47. We test, and he's dead on. So we are really monitoring. The other part of the management is what he eats and when he eats. So he can never, ever have a carb without a protein, because a protein will help you process your carb and avoid the high spike and the drop to the low blood sugars. And so we are forever looking for low carb, high protein combinations, and he has to eat about every hour and a half to 2 hours. And that is the only way we can get him to hold steady at about 60, 70, 80, maybe on a good day. So we adjust our life and we do this. We think we have this pretty much under control. One day I come home from work late at night and I open up the door and there's my unflappable husband shaken again. He says, you won't believe what happened today. I said, okay, what happened? He said, well, today at lunch, at work, I got really, really tired. And he works at Spradley Bar. He's an auto body tech. So I went out to the car, put the seat back, and took a nap. I fell asleep, and I had the most bizarre, unsettling dream. I was driving around Greeley. The cars were coming at me at an angle. Their tires were like triangles. I couldn't find home. I couldn't find work. I drove through Arrowhead. I drove by the Napa Auto Body Store. It was so disturbing. I couldn't find where I was supposed to be. So I finally stopped at this house. I went upstairs, went downstairs, drank some juice, talked to some guy. And the next thing I know, I'm laying back in my seat, my car, and my boss pulls up next to me. And he says, "Hey, are you all right?" And Jeff said, "Yeah." His boss said, I don't think so. I just had someone call me that said there was a tall, bald guy here who says he works at Spradley Bar, and I think he was on drugs. So it wasn't a dream. All of those things had happened, and 2 hours were lost that he didn't really know for sure what had gone on. So the next morning I say, "Jeff, do you think we can find where you were? Do you think we can try to piece this back together?" "I think so." So we get in the car, we find it, it's over in Mountain Vista. We pull up to the house, there is a contractor working there. We get out, we walk up the sidewalk, and the contractor walks out and he says, "Hey Jeff, how are you today?" We don't know this man at all. So he introduces himself, he says, "Hi, I'm Leonard." We say, "Leonard, this is Jeff's disease. Can you tell us what happened yesterday?" So Leonard said, "Yeah, I walked out the door and I saw Jeff pull up into the cul-de-sac, and he was driving pretty erratic. But he parked, and he got out, and he was acting really weird." And Leonard said, "It gave me pause, because look at Jeff. Jeff's 6'4", 230 pounds. Look at me. Now, Leonard is very fit and strong, but there is a height difference." And Leonard said, "I wasn't for sure what to do." So I watched him, and Jeff started looking like he was walking across the cul-de-sac to go visit some friends. So I went into my enclosed trailer, did what I needed to do, and when I came back out, Jeff was standing on the front porch of the house, leaning against the column, wearing my glasses and my tape measure. And Jeff looks at Leonard and says, "Hey, dude, what's up?" So Leonard's now looking at this large, strong, strange man standing on the porch wearing his glasses and tape measure, and he starts to ask questions. Where do you work? What's your job? Are you married? And Jeff can answer those questions, sort of, but it's very muddy. It's not very clear. Jeff keeps also saying, "Are we in Greeley? Are you sure this is Greeley? I don't think this is Greeley. What year is it? What's the date? I don't think it's 2015. I really don't think it's 2015. But Leonard said after about 15 minutes, he could see that Jeff was starting to sort of come around and making a little bit more sense. And all of a sudden, Jeff looked at him and went, "Hey, are these yours?" And Leonard went, "Yeah." He took the glasses off, gave him the tape measure, and said, "I got to go to work." Walked out, drove off. And Leonard did call Spradley Bar and say, "Hey, there was a tall, bald guy here. I think he's on drugs. You better check on him. He says he works for you." I'm crying. Jeff's shook. We hug Leonard and say, "Thank you so much." We go immediately to the endocrinologist. The endocrinologist says, "Oh, this is life-threatening hypoglycemic moment. Think of the car accident. Think if you wouldn't have gotten any sugar, what would have happened? And you didn't recognize the symptoms when your blood sugar was getting that low. So we're going to put a 24/7 monitor on you." So she does that. We leave. We go back to that house, Mountain Vista, that night, knock on the front door. Woman opens the door, and I say, "I know you know that someone was in your home today. This is the someone. I want you to meet him. There was nothing nefarious going on. He was not casing your house. And I know this was a huge invasion of your privacy and your home. But had he not got that sugar, had he not drank that juice, he likely would have died today. So here's 4 jugs of juice. We're replacing it. We are so sorry. And thank you." And she just could not have been more gracious. She's crying, I'm crying. Jeff is so ready for the day to be over. So we go home. The 24/7 monitor is fairly useless, though, because the lowest you can set it at is 60. And because Jeff drops into the 20s, 30s, and 40s, it is going off all the time, every 45 minutes, every hour and a half. So it's really not helping us, and it becomes more of an annoyance, so he takes that off. But we double down on our management. We are even more careful about food. We are even more careful about the timing when he eats. We start eating later and later at night and earlier in the morning. We get him an emergency alert necklace in case something like this happens again. We get him a glucagon pen, like an EpiPen. I go to work. I go to his work. I train them what to look for. If Jeff is acting like this, You need to give him sugar immediately, followed quickly by a protein, and call me. So we adjust again. But that episode made us start digging in even deeper, and it made endocrinology start digging in even deeper. But because it's a metabolic disease, it's not like your broken arm, where you can see it in the x-ray, you can get your surgery done and fixed. You gotta measure, you gotta monitor, it takes time. But as we're all doubling down, they start running more tests, and they start realizing that the adrenal insufficiency maybe was a red herring, and maybe that isn't what was causing the hypoglycemic moments. So the endocrinologist earlier this year says, I think you might have an insulinoma. And that's a tumor on your pancreas. 1 in a million get this. She said, I want you to go to the Mayo Clinic. And we went, ooh, Mayo Clinic, out of state, lots of money. We have great healthcare in Colorado. Let's get a second opinion here. So we get the second opinion. He also agrees, I think you got an insulinoma. So let's do an MRI. We fight with insurance, we get the MRI. It doesn't show one. Next test is an upper endoscopic ultrasound. We get that, and it does show a tumor. So on September 11th this year, Jeff had surgery, 5.5 hours, and they intended to go in and just kind of scoop that tumor off his pancreas, but it was located really close to a vein. Side note, if you want to see that, I have pictures later. But it's located really close to a vein. So they had to remove about half the length of his pancreas, and your pancreas is about 6 to 8 inches long. They had to take half of it off. His spleen came too, but it was an innocent bystander. It was just casualty of location. There was nothing wrong with the spleen. But they did that in that surgery. He was in the hospital 2 days, and within 2 weeks, you wouldn't believe the difference in my husband. His energy is back. He is not crabby at all. He can go hours without eating, and his blood sugars are hanging right at the 100 mark, 110. So we are ever so grateful about the medical intervention and the outcome. But tonight, the story is about our gratitude to Leonard. Think what you would do. You're working at a house alone. Strange tall guy shows up, puts on your glasses, puts on your tape measure, goes in the home. Leonard rightfully could have called the police, and they rightfully could have arrested Jeff. Now, the rap sheet would have said B&E for juice, but the police could have responded with force. Leonard could have been a concealed carry person that responded with force, but he didn't make that choice. He chose calm kindness. And my hope is that if you are ever faced with something bizarre like this, you also do the same. Thank you.